They say life is what you make it. So what happens if you actually try? What if you actually tried to get your mind right? What if you actually tried to live the high life? What if you happen to die cause life is finite? What if you actually tried to live your best day ever? What if you actually tried to get your mind right? What if you actually tried to live the high life? What if you happen to die cause life is finite? What if you actually tried to live your best day ever? What if you actually grind out when the time's right? What if you actually blinded by your hindsight? What if you actually find out what defines life? What if you actually tried to live your best day ever? I'm getting 1% better every day. I'm getting 1% better every way. I'm waking up every day to a sunny day. No matter what the weather say, life is like a record, so just let it play.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Best Day Ever. Today is going to be our Thursday show where we cover random hobbies and interests that us, the hosts, have. And one of my interests and one of my hobbies is being prepared. I grew up hunting with my grandfather. I've been in the bush. I've been, hunting in sort of the backwoods for about 20 years now with him. And a big part of that culture is being prepared. But I find more and more often, the more I get integrated into a city lifestyle. Okay, I come from a small town. I grew up on a farm, and of course had all of those hunting opportunities. But the more people I meet that are from the city, the less I'm convinced that anybody at all is thinking about preparedness. And growing up hunting, growing up around firearms, growing up around sort of the camping lifestyle, and being able to sustain yourself off of the land. It gives you a different perspective on what's possible, on what sort of natural forces are going to impact you if you're outside of your home. You get a real sense of respect, right? You have to respect nature. It is a mean force. And then recently, I've been thinking about this as we sort of see some more conflicts arise around the world, as we see more of a kind of turn towards lower trust society, and what could be possible as we explore that turning. And if you guys missed our discussion yesterday, we were actually talking about the fourth turning. Okay, so I invite you guys to go back and watch the replay from Matt's talk on the fourth turning, where we discuss, what kind of happens as we go through hard times, and what that means for us societally. And I wanted to have this discussion with you guys about the go bag. Okay. And I'd be interested to hear in the comments what your reaction is, even to just that word. And that's why I put this on the screen here, go bag, right? With like a question mark and a tornado. It's like, what does that really mean to you? When you hear me say go bag, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about somebody that's like, gone off the deep end on prepping? Are you thinking about a tinfoil hat person? Are you thinking about Jason Bourne, right? Like, what is your first reaction to hearing the word go bag? And what is it you're thinking about? And Matt, I'd actually like to give you that question. When you hear go bag, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I definitely think prepper when I hear go bag. So someone that's trying to be prepared. Prepper can even be it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I guess a couple things that like in that vein though that naturally come up to me is like I think it was in the movie The Road, where like I don't even remember what causes society's collapse or what happens in the road, but I'm pretty sure the main character, like when he first finds out that shit's in the fan, right? And again, SHTF is a regular term you'll hear in regards to go bags, is he fills up his bathtub with water. And that was one of those things where I was just like, oh, like that makes a lot of sense. I grew up on a farm where we had well water and stuff. So that like, it didn't like hit as hard as you might like at first think, but like I was like, shit, yeah, if I was living like in a concrete box in the middle of an urban jungle, like yeah, filling up your bathtub with water in an emergency sounds really smart, right? And like I can remember that even led me down a stream of like googling things, and like I think it's called like a water bob, right? You can get for your bathtub that essentially is just like a big plastic bag that you fill instead of filling your tub in a case of emergency. And again, I think a lot of people naturally when they hear go bag, they think, what's it called? Like Iwitaki or whatever, like end of the world as we know it, when shit hits the fan. And that certainly is, I think, one of the use cases for a go bag, and probably the best use case. But there's a lot of other situations, right? Whether it be a tropical storm like we just saw on the East Coast with Fiona, whether it's short-term civil disobedience like cities like in Minneapolis experience, right, during the BLM riots and things of that nature, or whether it's just like longer term power outages here at the Citadel, right? We had power go out for a period of time. So when I think of go bag, I think of generally like short term prepper. So this isn't about like preparing for the next 10 years. It's not about like having generators or solar panels. It's about like surviving a short period of time, whether that's to allow you to get to a different place, a safer place, or honestly even stay in place, but be able to stay in place. So that's what I naturally think of with the go bag.
Yeah, those are some really great perspectives, and it's obvious when you use the words that you were just using that you've actually looked into this topic before.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I've
I,
done deep rabbit holes.
yeah, I would say you are far more advanced in terms of the language and the intentional sort of thought process that you brought there. And I wanted to bring to light some of the reasons why I actually don't think a lot of people are talking about this right now, or even thinking about it. So I'm just going to share with you, and in fact, I'll share my screen so you guys can read along off of the Substack. But here's some of the reasons why I actually. Oh, don't forget to subscribe, by the way, guys. You guys can subscribe there so that you get notifications as soon as we put these things out. But here are some of the reasons why I actually believe that people aren't really thinking about this every day. Okay, we've enjoyed high trust society for decades, right? In general, I think most people would say they trust their neighborhood or their neighbor, right? Or they trust the government is going to be there. They think that the threat of war is domestically. The threat of war domestically is probably perceived to be very low. Okay, we're generally speaking not waiting here for America to invade or something like that. A lot of us live in what we consider safe neighborhoods or cities. Okay, generally speaking, you go to work every day, you get your groceries, you come home, and you're not expecting to be robbed, right? Or you're not expecting to have a disaster happen to you while you're in and out of the house or doing your daily routine. Perhaps there's no one in our life or no media that we've ever consumed that talks to us about preparedness, right? It's just not on the top of our minds. Perhaps we've never been put in a situation where it mattered. Okay. If you're not like me, growing up hunting or camping or hiking, things like that, maybe you've just never been put in a situation where preparedness truly mattered. Um, Perhaps you believe that somebody else is going to take charge of the situation, right? A lot of people believe wholeheartedly that if there is an emergency, police will always be there, fire services will always be there. Okay. Ambulatory services, EMS will always be there. And then there's, of course, the idea that, there are sometimes a negative connotation put on the idea of prepping, right? And in fact, we even saw the idea of preparedness getting a lot of flack recently during the COVID pandemic, right? We saw a big run on things like toilet paper, right? We saw a big
Well,
run on
and that is one of the stupid things to prep for, but yes.
it is, regardless of whether or not it's stupid, did it cause violence in those stores? Right? Did it cause calamity in the parking lots? Did it cause people to act irrationally in in pursuit to get those things that they thought was very important? Okay, toilet paper might seem stupid. Also, something you should have in your go bag, by the way. You're going to regret it if you don't. But so while toilet paper sounds stupid, food, that probably doesn't sound stupid. How fast did we see food get taken off the shelves during COVID, right? Or during the most recent natural disasters? Do you remember, Matt, when the bottled water was all gone in Florida? I can't remember which tropical storm it was, but there was a tropical storm and all the water was gone. All the water, just no bottled water was at the stores. And people were taking cartloads of it out and getting into fistfights during the process. Disaster is not likely going to strike you when you're well rested, okay? When you're feeling super sharp, when you're feeling like all of your muscles are feeling great that day. Disaster is probably going to happen when you're least expecting it. And one of the points about this talk that I wanted to make is that preparing for a disaster, right? Whether that's natural, whether that's infrastructure, whether that's a riot or protest, whether that's domestic terrorism, preparing for this type of stuff is so much more affordable and accessible and easy before the disaster happens. Okay.
Yeah. And one thing just to build on there, Adam, because like as you mentioned, I definitely have read, watched, and just thought extensively on the subject matter. Um, you know, being like mildly prepared allows you to kind of zig when other people are zagging, and that's a big one, right? Like, you know,
Absolutely.
if we're going through a major catastrophe, I don't want to be the dude in line at the grocery store. Like, if I have to go, I want to be the dude at the like hardware store or the pharmacy. Like, again, because there's always going to be levels of preparedness, and that's one of the things that like whether it's movies like The Road or TV shows like Jericho, I think did it great. Station 13. There's a handful of other ones about kind of society collapsing and how you'd want to position yourself. The the Mandalays, right? I think that's the name of the book. It's a really popular book amongst like Bitcoiners and preppers. I'll have to double check it, but it goes through a very similar type of collapse. And like, yeah, the first spot that riots are going to break out is over fresh water and food. And so you already want to have yourself insulated to a certain point there so that you can be going after different things, right? Or I guess like The Walking Dead is another classic TV show example. But I've always thought that like, if people are like rioting and robbing grocery stores, I want to be the guy rioting and robbing the pharmacy or the hardware store. Versus like, again, you want to be the idea of a go bag for me in most emergencies is trying to remove yourself from high population densities, right? Because that's where there's just more variables and there's greater risks going to be associated with anything that plays out there.
Yep. And I would completely agree with that. And one of the principles here is you want to be able to control as much of this as you possibly can. And when we're in a situation where there's 20, 30, 50 other people that we're interacting with, it's probably not feasible. So I wanted to bring up just before we even get into what goes in a go bag, what have we been talking about when it comes to the tools and resources necessary to keep you, your family, and your network safe? I want to talk about some of the things that are most likely going to happen to you. Okay. So, Matt, can you think of a few of the things that are going to happen when a disaster happens right beside you? Like, how about this? You're driving right now to Winnipeg, and you're on the highway, and all of a sudden, the cars in front of you have a massive crash. You end up participating in this crash. Your vehicle's disabled, right? There are people around you that are now bleeding. Okay. Maybe you've witnessed the death of somebody. Okay. It's a violent situation. There's blood involved. Certainly there's a lot of chaos. People are screaming. What are some of the things you believe are going to happen to you and your state of mind?
Oh, like certainly like everyone goes into a certain degree of shock or like they're on tilt, right? In regards to it. So oftentimes you won't be necessarily capable of making the best decisions as you could if you were cool, calm, and collected. So I think that's a big aspect. And again, any level of preparedness you can have will like it's almost kind of like a cheat, right? Like it'll help you kind of like if you've already got the first aid kit in your vehicle, you're going to be like, well, I know I've got that, so I guess I'll get that out, even if I don't know how to use it or anything like that. But it's all about just like having those kind of like shortcuts, or it's going to reduce the friction to you hopefully making the right decision.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of those things. And you brought up something really important there, which is even if you don't know how to use it. And that's one of the things I do want to discuss today is like, hey, your tools and resources that you're going to decide to put in your go bag or carry with you in your vehicle are only as good as your ability to actually use them effectively. And then I think that that's
It,
one of the really important
like
things to cover here.
it definitely like it's better to know how to use them to not, but it's still much better to have them and not know how to use them versus to not have them whatsoever, right? Like whether you're thinking of like a barter situation or again it could be your contribution where it could be like I'm a doctor, like someone's a doctor there in that car crash, but they don't have a first aid kit and you're like, well, at
Yep.
least I got this, right? Like I'm contributing, I can at least be a net positive here to this situation.
Absolutely. So I think a few of the first things that are going to happen to you is, first of all, your sympathetic nervous system is going to take over, and that's going to cause that fight or flight response that Matt's referencing. And that, of course, is going to do a few things, right? Essentially, what your body's going to do for you and take over for you is flooding your muscles with blood. When your muscles get flooded with blood, your brain starts working a little bit funny. You start losing tactile ability. Okay, so your hands and response times are going to be different. It's not going to be how you feel normally. Your heart rate's likely to increase. Cortisol, adrenaline, these types of things that make our responses change under pressure are going to absolutely be affecting your ability to make decisions, as well as, those tactile things like using your hands to unzip things, unbuckle yourself, escape the vehicle. Maybe there's a fire that you need to get out of, or maybe you need to help somebody else out of the vehicle. Your decision-making ability is going to be affected. And the thing is that a lot of the time when these things are happening, a lot of the people around you are going to be in the same situation. And what that causes is a general calamity. Okay. If everybody is panicking and everybody's under duress and all of their decision making has been affected, it's very, very important that somebody takes charge. And so I think in all of these situations, what you immediately want to do is take charge of the situation, whether that's for your own personal help or for somebody else. And one of the first things that we want to do, if it's available to us, right, is try and get additional help. So whether that's an emergency service or getting the help of other people around you, you want to try and get help, and you want to assign help if you can. So if everybody thinks, there's this weird bias in emergency situations where everybody thinks that somebody else is taking control and somebody else is actually going to do something about it, and it's
Yeah.
immediate.
And
You've
that's a
seen this?
huge one, honestly. Like, and it doesn't even have to be a giant emergency, right? Like, we've even shared in some of our news stories, like people acting out on the subway, and you can
Yeah.
see there's this giant deference to authority. If there's no one clearly in authority there, we often end up. There's probably a specific term for it, but essentially, it's a tragedy of the commons, right? Or there's
Yep.
that like classic story I think of in the 70s or 80s in New York, where like was it like dozens of people listened to this woman be raped on the street, and everyone else assumed someone else would call the police.
Yeah.
And like it literally just happened and played out in real time there. And again, it's because everyone else is just kind of looking around, shocked and completely disoriented by this unusual stimulus, right? Whether it be like that emergency, physical violence, whatever.
Yep. And it happens quick. The thing is that these things happen very quick as well. And so I guess my initial point is, first of all, have the tools and equipment you're going to need if something like this happens. Second of all, know how to use it. And then third, take charge immediately. And you have to just appreciate the fact that action is faster than reaction. Okay. So when an emergency situation presents itself, it is going to happen much faster than you can decide to act on. And when that happens, it's going to come down to your familiarity with what you have on your person, whether that's like in your actual go bag or in your vehicle. We're going to discuss those two different categories, or in your home. And you need to be able to quickly make these decisions. And I wanted to cover just a few of the things that might happen, because I know some people, if they're listening to this, they're going to instantly go Jason Bourne here and think like, okay, we're escaping and evading spy agencies or something like that, or evading the government. And more than likely, you're going to lose that battle. But there's a lot of other things that happen and could happen to you that would make you want to be prepared. So I'm going to list off a few different things and kind of take you guys through a few events that I'm aware of that have happened in my lifetime. So, Matt, do you recall the Boston Marathon bombing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, 9/11, 2001, right? School shootings. We've just actually finished talking about Sandy Hook, and there are many other examples of that in the United States. Mass shootings in public spaces. I'm thinking about Las Vegas. Okay, over 50 people were shot in Las Vegas, and many, many, many more injured. Okay, riots and protests. So I'm thinking January 6th. I'm thinking BLM. I'm thinking Portland. Okay. Matt already brought up Minneapolis. I'm thinking natural disasters. Okay. Natural disasters. Matt just brought up Hurricane Fiona, was it?
Yeah, that we experienced on the East Coast, right? And I
Yep.
was going through your list here, Adam, and one that you didn't put on that is probably a very realistic situation, because we've experienced it recently. It's just like the interact system going down, or a
Yep.
telecommunication system going down as well, right? And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that immediately people are killing each other on the streets, but the person that had a little bit of cash in their pocket was at a much greater advantage than the individual that wasn't.
Absolutely. And just to give you some context of basically things that have happened in my lifetime. Now, of course, I'm fortunate that we live in, southwestern Ontario. Not a lot of this specifically happens in southwestern Ontario, but if you're consuming this anywhere else, this could be very relevant to you. So, just in the last couple of years, we've had wildfires, tornadoes, hurricanes, winter storms. I don't even, what is a derecho, a straight line of windstorm,
Hmm.
whatever. It's basically a goddamn thunderstorm and tornado, hurricane, tropical storm, earthquake, wildfire. Okay. These things are everywhere. And if you look at some of the death tolls, I mean, 2, 90, 115, 237, 47, 31, 211 killed, 120 missing in this hurricane in 2020. That's Hurricane Eta. And so these things are real, they're present. They can absolutely happen to you. And one of the reasons why I think it's important for us to talk about this is because, again, I don't know that everybody fully groks the importance of being prepared for these things, because I think there's a bias or a pitfall to feeling safe in your home, right? So when you're home, like, this is where your family sleeps. This is where you come back from work every night, you lock your doors, you feel good, right? And being at home, I think it's one of those false senses of security of something like what we've just discussed goes on. Like these natural disasters, we've heard countless stories of people that are in wildfire areas and they just decide, no, I don't believe that the fire is going to come this way. I was watching the news last night. It's 200 kilometers over the other way, and that's the way the winds are going. And then all of a sudden, the winds change, and you hear people trying to panic and get the hell out of the house. Right? They're trying to get out of Dodge before the fire reaches them in their house. The same can be said about flash flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes. We're seeing this right now in Florida. It's very real for people. We're seeing it here on the East Coast in Canada. So the wildfire's been burning up the West Coast for the last couple of years. We saw real severe damage there and loss of life. And so I really believe that these things are real and exist outside of that kind of Jason Bourne, oh, you've got to go bag because you think you're some cool military guy or you think you're evading spies. It's like, no, I need to be able to prioritize and execute the materials and goods and tools that I need when I need to get out of my house fast. And if you're in Southwestern Ontario, maybe this isn't as applicable to you, but I still have it because I don't know that there's an excuse not to. And in my article here, I've written that I believe that ignorance is a very poor excuse to not have these things. And the nice thing about what I'm about to talk about in terms of, what goes in it, why are we thinking about these types of things? What are some of the considerations I want to make? The nice thing is a lot of this stuff is probably in your house. Okay. If you've ever gone camping, okay, if you've ever taken a hiking trip, if you've lived in an environment that has various seasons, right, you probably have a lot of the clothing and equipment already in your house that would contribute to something like a go bag. Okay, but there's a few things I want to cover really quick before we even list everything that goes into it. When we're talking about the go bag, and Matt's already kind of brought this up, but what we want is a bag that's prepared with materials, resources, tools that we have decided that fits our lifestyle, but not just us, not just the individual. If you have a family, I've seen this before and I've heard it actually talked about on a lot of these videos that, like, alpha male has his go bag. He's got it all set up. It's absolutely perfect. And then he realizes that he's packed it just for himself, right? He realizes that he doesn't have the medication or whatever that his kids need, and it's not in his go bag. And I think it's important to just realize that, like, when shit hits the fan, you might be alone, but you might also have to care for your family and you might be separate from them. Okay. I think that's a very common theme is, like, the kids are at school, right? You're at work. Your wife's at work. Your kids are at home with the wife, or you're at home with the kids and wife's out of the house, or whatever your sexual orientations are. I don't care, but be prepared, right? So what we're trying to do with this bag is it needs to be fast. Okay. It needs to be accessible. Okay. The things that are in it, we need to be considerate of how much they weigh, right? What's our mobility like when we take this bag? When we take this bag, where are we going? How fast do we need to get there? How long are we going to be doing this for? And generally speaking, Matt brought up something really interesting. And the bag that I'm going to talk about today is actually more of a 72-hour bag, but there's different bags for your different applications. Okay. So I've got an at-home bag and I've got a in transit or a vehicle go bag. Okay. And the vehicle go bag, the purpose of that is to think not in days, but rather think about hours. Okay. Because we're going to be somewhere else outside of our home operation base and we're going to need to get there, right? More than likely, or we're going to need to get somewhere safe that has a lot of resources for us. So the first bag I want to talk about is kind of your home bag. And what we're going to try and cover with our home go bag is shelter, food, water, security, hygiene, medical supplies, and then recovery and rescue supplies. And that sounds like a lot. But again, I need to remind everybody that you probably have most of this stuff in your house right now. And what it comes down to is, finding a bag. You probably even have a bag. Okay. I'm talking about a bag in a closet right now, a backpack, right? Doesn't need to be a fancy hiking bag. Doesn't need to be a several $100 purchase or a multiple $1,000 outlay at some outdoor store. And I think that's worth talking about because I think a lot of people may be thinking to themselves like, well, what's the likelihood I'm going to use this thing? First of all. And then second of all, if I'm not going to use it, or if I don't think I'll ever use these things, then what priority do I need to give this? And it's like, well, if you need it, you're going to need it bad. And if you don't have it, it's really going to suck and be expensive. Like we already talked about, like if you're trying to find food in the middle of a disaster, well, so is everybody else. So here are some of the things that I want to talk about with the go bag at your house. And of course, this is separate from what I think you should have at your house as redundancies so that you can shelter in place. This is more of a legit, like we need to get out of the house or we need to, leave our home for some short amount of time. Usually I'm thinking about, a minimum 72-hour kind of period, which is 3 days, by the way. And I'm thinking about, how do I get out of the house? And this is separate from the conversation of, how you should secure your home, what sort of supplies you should have there in case of emergencies and sheltering in place. First of all, I think it's important to keep this bag accessible. It's important that your family and anybody else that is going to be using your go bag or bags needs to be aware of where it is. Okay, so it not only is it accessible, but they know where it is. And then third, we've actually trained up everybody in the house or in the family unit or whatever that looks like to use the equipment inside of it. And we've packed the required goods. So first thing going in the go bag, and just like basic best practice here is anything that's essential for an emergency should be on the outside of the bag. Okay. It should be very accessible in a dedicated pocket. So I'm thinking things like medical and things like that. And then some best practices for mobility. There's a common saying here that mobility equals survivability. This is very important, right? If you're in a mass shooting or something, you want to get the hell out of there as fast as you can. If you're in a flood or a fire or something like that, of course, mobility is going to equal survivability in that example. And so we want to pack our heavy shit at the top. You want your weight on your back, on your shoulders, not on your lower back, pony back. So that's just a best practice. But in general, we want to prioritize things that are going to be for emergency use, like your medical kit needs to be super accessible. But first thing I want to talk about, shelter. Okay. I always have shelter in my go bag. So shelter could look like a bunch of different things depending on the size of the bag you have, your physical ability and your climate, right? Like what your actual needs are going to be. So I always have a small tent. I have a 2-person, very small, very light, very compact tent that I keep in my bag. I have a tarp, okay, as an alternative to a tent, or you could use a hammock, or you could use a poncho. You basically are looking for anything that you can sleep on, sleep in, and sleep under, okay, because the ground is actually kind of your enemy. It's a really good conductor of heat, so it's going to take your heat and make you very cold, and that is dangerous, even in warm climates, okay? Don't fool yourself. You don't want to fight the weather and fight the earth. So I think that's really important to have shelter. I also have a sleeping bag in mind. We live in Canada. It gets cold at night here, regardless if you're in the summer or winter. It's just cold in general. And a light sleeping bag in a compression bag to save a lot of space. That's important to me. I've also got an inflatable pillow, not required, but nice luxury, and very compact. It's a very small item. I've got a medical kit. And the medical kit, again, you want this to be super accessible. I've got a kit there to essentially stop the bleed. Okay, so things like gauze. I've got a ton of gauze and compression stuff. I've got a tourniquet. Okay, that is always accessible, and you want that on the outside of your bag, on your belt if you can. But a tourniquet's good if you get puncture wound from anything. You're trying to escape, cut yourself on something, hit an artery, and it starts bleeding. This will save your life. You can also improvise one if you have, a shirt and a stick or anything like that. If I had any prescriptions, I would keep prescriptions in my go bag. Okay. So if your kid has, diabetes, some sort of medication that they take regularly, make sure you have the goddamn prescription in your bag and make sure it's not super expired. So it will actually be effective.
Yeah. And
EpiPen.
that's a big one, is like cycling through it, right? If you're going to have medication in your bag. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. EpiPen, great for all sorts of uses. You can buy them, you can steal them from your buddies that have allergies. I keep one all the time. It's a great thing to have if you need it in an emergency. Antibiotics. A lot of people don't think about this, but this is honestly one of the most important things that you could have stored around your house and in your go bag. Make sure you have that because, like Matt said, there's going to be people. If this is a true emergency, people are going to be freaking the hell out, and they guaranteed don't have antibiotics. And if they need them, you should have them. Scissors, great for cutting off clothing if there's any injuries. Multiple uses there as well. I keep glue. Okay, if you're bleeding a lot, but it's not serious enough to warrant a tourniquet, glue you can usually use to stop the bleed and seal wounds and stuff like that. A small sewing kit would be ideal in here as well. I don't have that in mind, but that would help. I keep a boo-boo kit. Okay. So Band-Aids, stuff like that. It's actually really dangerous to get infections if you're trying to survive. And
honestly, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, that like in a real collapse, that like infection's going to kill you. It's going to be like, you climbing a rusty fence and like getting a little scrape and not cleaning that out. Yeah.
Instantly. Blood poisoning, any type of infection that goes to your bone. Like, dude, it's really scary. So, amoxicillin, great for that type of thing, but just as well as covering it up and keeping it clean. Right. And I also keep painkillers because if you actually need to go and you're very sore and that's preventing you from having your required mobility, you should just have it. It's cheap, it's simple, very easy to stock, and they don't go bad that often. So I keep painkillers in there. I also keep 550 paracord. And if you guys don't know what 550 paracord is, I should have included an image there. So I'm just going to pull one up right now on our screen share. But I'm telling you, this stuff is so.
Oh, you're muted, Adam.
Oh, sorry. This stuff is so cheap and it's available on Amazon. Like, I'm just going to pull this up because I forgot to include an image, but like, this is what 550 paracord is. And it's just like a very thin kind of, it's probably nylon or something. But this stuff, the reason why it's called 550 is it's got a 550 pound tensile strength. Okay. And yeah, nylon inner core. It's wear resistant. It doesn't create lint. Its low capacity is absolutely unbelievable. And it's so cheap. This is 100 meters of it available, prime shipping, 1-day shipping for $28. This stuff has unlimited uses. If you need to tie up your shelter, if you need to replace a shoelace on your boots or your shoes, if you need to tie anything up, like, Matt's got bears with him. So if you need to tie up your food, right? You can hook a carabiner up on one end, throw it up across a tall branch, hoist up your food. There is unlimited use cases for paracord. You can also make a nice sling. Some of my guns just have 550 paracord as the sling because it's replaceable, it's simple to remove, and it's very easy to tie. Make sure you know some knots too, by the way, if you're actually going to be prepared for this type of thing. And so I think that having the 550 paracord is important. Now, Matt, have you ever thought about like the color of the things that you're using in your go bag?
Yeah, like I definitely think it's valuable, right? That's why you often find those like paracords and the greens and browns and sort of gray colors. And one thing, this was kind of tangential, and I ended up having to Google it because I was having a brain fart here. But is even like when thinking about like your clothing and stuff, right? I'm a huge believer in like gray man. The idea
Yep.
of like in an emergency, you just want to blend into the background, and again, like literally things like kind of a gray and black hoodie, right? Like your shirt wouldn't be so good, in my opinion, for a gray man approach.
Well, it would in Canada. Come on. You're wearing plaid. Okay,
Gray and
so
black.
the thing with the gray man thing, I want to talk about this really briefly because we could certainly get off on a tangent here. But the gray man theory is that essentially, yeah, if there's an emergency or if you're trying to hide, one of the best ways to do it is to just avoid attention. Okay. Now, I think there are some cases where you may want to consider your visibility. And if you're hiding, if you think that this is like all out meltdown, we're super low trust right now, like we're not sure about the intentions of the people around us, and so we want to just escape and evade attention, I think you should stick with very low key colors. This also applies to your choice of backpack. So actually, I have it right here. I'm just going to grab it.
Yeah, and while Adam's doing that again, like I think gray man theory is often something that like gets overlooked in a lot of like, you know, high production video and TV shows in regards to like end of the world scenarios. It's like, man, you just want to blend in. Even think of like for people that are fans of The Walking Dead, right? I think like at one point in time they discovered like, oh, if we rub ourselves with like dead people, like they don't pick up on us. And like think of that as a similar principle, right? It's just like the dude that's in a Hawaiian t-shirt with a Rolex is much more likely going to get approached on the street than the dude in the gray hoodie with the hoodie pulled up, sunglasses on. And again, you don't want to look too inconspicuous. Like you don't want to literally look like you're a secret agent or anything. And like even small things like your physical movements, right? Like you don't want to like naturally scope out a place and look like you're scoping out a place. You want it just to seem like, you know, you're just part of the background. You're an NPC. This is the one time being an NPC is a really good thing.
Yeah, literally. And I firmly actually believe in this, right? If you stand out, you become a target. You do
Oh
not want to
yeah.
be a target.
And like honestly, even just like to take this on a little tangent here, Adam, but like I've owned real estate in like harder neighborhoods, right? Like
Yep.
and some pretty rough stuff. And like at one point in time, my sister was managing one of the rougher buildings, and like one of my pieces of advice to her was like predators can see a victim. Like they can literally tell based upon your body movements, your body language, the way you hold yourself, whether you make too much eye contact or too little eye contact. And you just need to like know that you're not the victim, right? Like, and honestly, it sounds stupid, but I think people that have looked into this stuff, like that can have a massive impact on how others interact with you, even in just like normal day society, let
Oh yeah.
alone a conflict oriented or a high stress situation.
Well, this is literally hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, right?
Hmm.
We are technically prey, and I think that it's baked into our genetics to understand when somebody looks fearful, and when we shift into if somebody's shifted into a predator mode, I mean they're going to notice these things. It's very visible. So I want to show you my bag. My bag right now is being repurposed because I'm about to go moose hunting for the week. So it's not fully loaded. So I'm not going to unpack the whole thing for you because it's prepped now for hunting. But this is the bag that I use for my go bag. It's a 30-liter bag, so it's relatively large. But I'm also a 200-pound, 5'10" powerhouse, right? I can carry this bag literally, and I have on 100-kilometer excursions before with no issue, fully loaded to the brim. So I want to take into consideration the weight and how much storage this thing has, and then of course get my supplies around it. But one thing you will notice is it's a hiking bag, right? This is actually a bag made by Black Diamond, which is just a hiking brand, so it's available at like Mountain Equipment Co-op or whatever. But one thing that is a consideration as well is if you are packing your go bag in a very overt kind of like tactical bag is what they're calling them now, like by brands like 511 and stuff like that. It's actually another way to stand out. So a common bag that's not very bright will allow you to cover and conceal yourself as you're actually engaging in this activity of getting out of Dodge. You'll see here, I never finish my prescriptions because I'm bad at doing that. But this is amoxicillin. I've got a shitload of it. So if there was ever to be a real emergency requiring antibiotics, I've got antibiotics for me and anybody that would be around me, and enough to last, honestly, almost any infection. I also have indomethacin here, which is going to be another type of antibiotic. Right in the top of my bag, I can access my flashlight, anything like that. And so anything that's going to want to be very accessible, you're going to want to have in the top of your bag or on the exterior of your bag. There's also these kidney pouches when we get hiking bags. Kidney pouch is great because you can put anything else that needs to be readily accessible in there. You could think something like a knife, a compass, multi-tool, anything that's going to be used where you might want to have great access to it. The other thing that I keep in my go bag is actually a hatchet. Hatchets are great multi-use tools. And when we're thinking about a go bag, you want almost everything to have a multi-use purpose. Hatchet, excellent for breaking windows if you need to, excellent for getting trees. If you need to build a shelter, if you need to build a fire, you're going to want a hatchet. You can also use hatchets to break locks. And so again, if we're in a truly get the hell out of Dodge situation, you may need to gain access to resources that you don't have. Okay. And that's part of improving your position and improving your security. And so hatchet's a great tool. Also, we're going to get banned from YouTube, but great personal defense if you really, really, really needed it for that purpose. I will also have dehydrated food provisions. And some people will claim that this is not as necessary because the idea of the go bag is to get to places that have more resources. But one of the arguments for this type of thing that I see is that you're going to need a lot of calories. Okay. It is extremely expensive to your body to be in high stress situations. You're burning through calories. The way your parasympathetic nervous system works, if you start eating, if you consume snacks, your body kind of calms down and it understands that it's back into thinking mode and not survival mode. So eating is actually a really important part of surviving, and morale as well. And morale is great. I mean, morale is one of the hidden secrets to surviving any situation. So for that, I use dehydrated food. I actually use MREs, like a meal ready to eat, which is something that you will need to boil water for, which is in some cases argued against because if we're thinking about like real scary stuff, if we're escaping from it, you probably don't want a lot of heat signature and you probably don't want a lot of visibility. But for my purposes, I don't think I'm really trying to hide that bad. And what I actually use for this is called a jet boil. And a jet boil, if you guys look it up, it's a really effective little camping stove, I guess is how you would say it. And I'll show it here on the screen if you're watching this through video. But these things are absolutely insane. The visibility of these things is very, 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 very low profile because it fits. The flame essentially gets dispersed through all these little fins here. And I've actually got this one here, the Jetboil Minimo. But this thing will light and ignite and boil your water in like seriously probably 30 seconds or less for the full cup, and you cannot extinguish them. I don't care if there's 100-kilometer winds, you can light this thing and it will absolutely work for you. And I think that's a huge advantage when it comes to being able to eat. And eating a real meal is so much more rewarding than some of these like really super dehydrated blocks of just like strict calories that you see some people using. I also keep chocolate bars and trail mix. Okay. Trail mix, chocolate bars, these types of things last forever in their packaging as long as they're not open. And they can offer you a lot of really cheap and light calories, and they're super dense, right? Super dense in calories and fat and all the things that are going to make your brain start functioning better. I always keep a multi-tool and knife in my bag. So I keep a couple different knives. One of them is going to be more for like handling and dealing with food or animals. And then the multi-tool is going to be for dealing with any random situations that come up. In terms of the multi-tool, I would generally speaking recommend a Leatherman. And I think that one of the best Leatherman knives that are out there is called the Leatherman Wave. And the Leatherman Wave has all sorts of tools on it. I mean, if you look at it, it's $150. And so I, you know, I respect that if this is too much for something you don't think you're going to use all the time, that might be a lot of money. And so, of course, this is perhaps something you need to take into consideration. But there are many other brands at many different price points, and
Yeah.
I think this is something you can use a lot if you made it a part of
And
your regular day.
And like, I guess one thing I would just say in general on this subject matter is like, it's always going to be a scale. So like, no matter what, some preparation is far better than no preparation.
Yes.
So again, like if your options are like, well, I can't afford that, so I'm not going to even bother trying to get a go bag ready. You would still be a lot better with literally just like a box cutter or a utility knife
Yep.
than like no knife whatsoever, or like a pair of pliers plus a box cutter. Like it's still going to be a huge net benefit to you versus literally just ignoring it because you're like, oh, I'm tuned out because this price point's above where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrying on down the list here. So I've got my knives and multi-tool. I always recommend having a compass. Now, the thing about having a compass is you would have to know how to use the damn thing. So, again, I think a lot of the tools that I pack, you want to have some experience in handling these things and actually using them. To go along with your compass, you're going to want a map of the city. And in addition to your map of your city, you'll want a map of the province or state that you live in. And I think this is important because if we think about some of the disasters I described, perhaps it's a domestic terrorism, perhaps it's a natural disaster like a fire, flood, tornado, earthquake, things like that. It's possible that your cell phone service isn't going to work, right? And I know we rely heavily on this stuff, but we've actually covered an article in the last 24 that describes 30 minutes of power backup for your cell phone towers. Okay, so if all the power's out everywhere, you may have only 30 minutes of GPS capability through your cell phone. Okay, if you don't have the map downloaded on your phone, or if your phone runs out of power, or if you don't have a map, where are you going when you run into that area of the fire, right? Or the flood that has interrupted your road? Like if you're Matt only has like basically one road out of his place. And if he goes down the one way and he can't figure out how to get where he needs to go, does he just suffer from a fire or flood? It's like, well, if you had a map, you might be able to find an alternative route. And if you had a
Or
compass, yes.
or if you have a boat,
Or have a,
alternative route.
Matt's go bag includes a boat. Matt's going to pull out his pocket boat and zoom across. GPS,
No, but
guys.
honestly, like I think a lot of people underestimate the value of a map, right? Like if you only grew up in a cell phone society, and particularly a smartphone society, it's really easy to just think that like you don't need a map whatsoever. I remember like in my third year of university, I had a sales job, and it was before smartphones, but like I had a cell phone, and like I had to actually learn really how to read maps and understand them and be able to like find in different neighborhoods and stuff like that. And I thought I knew the city pretty well. And I knew the main arteries, but I had no idea about just the sprawl of subdivision after subdivision. And understand that a lot of neighborhoods these days are literally designed to make it difficult to navigate in the hopes that it essentially de-incentivizes people that are strangers from coming into your neighborhood. So that's why like subdivisions are no longer like boxes, right? They literally used to just be like, straight lines and squares, and now you've got all these winding, curving roads, regardless of it actually being necessary.
Yeah, and I literally can't stress how important this is. Like if, especially when you're in a disaster and you don't know where the hell to go, it's really important to have the map. Another tip or trick that I have, and Matt, I hope you're okay with this, but I think we're going to go a little bit over time today. But I do think it's important to know this stuff. This is my everyday bag. Okay, this is just a backpack, nothing special. This isn't crazy. This is the bag that's going with me everywhere. And I didn't even prepare. I didn't even realize I was going to show these on the camera. So this is literally just what's in my bag. Power bank. Okay. This is coming up on the list, but I just have a power bank here. This thing can charge my iPhone, like I think 10 full charges, as well as it acts as a flashlight. And yeah, I mean, this thing's just genius. But here's my map. You guys are thinking I'm kidding. This is a large Ontario map. actually provided to me by Matt. And inside this map, if I open it up, no, I'm not going to be able to fold this thing back. That's another lesson. But if I open it up, there's also a highlighted route, okay, to Matt's place, which is interesting, right? Like if I needed to go to Matt's place and my cell phone's not working, do I actually know the route? Or
Well,
if the one route that crosses from here to there is broken, how do I get around that? Right?
And another little best practice is honestly like writing down important phone numbers on that map and other things in that regards, because again, like the vast majority of us no longer remember other people's phone numbers because of convenience
Or their
and
address, right? It's just saved in your phone.
100%. And so again, like these are very like everyone can afford a $10 map of their city or region and afford a pen to write down a few key numbers or highlight a few key locations.
Yep, and key locations is another thing, right? What are points of interest for you? Where is the pharmacy? Do you even know? Like do you actually know where the closest pharmacy is and how to get there? And what if that one road that you always take is not available to you at this point? Interesting kind of thought. So we've got maps, GPS. A little Garmin GPS these days is like $150. They're waterproof, they're weatherproof, they connect to satellites. They're going to be available when cellular is not. Very great tool, but I will tell you this: most of these GPSs don't have roads on them. Okay, they have your specific location, your long and lat, or if you're using the MGRS system, they've got that grid system for you. But it's not really going to tell you where you are. So best practice with your GPS: hook it up to your computer. They all do this these days, and plug in the points of interest. Okay, plug in the important places to you that you want to get to using your GPS. This is another important step people just don't talk about. And, to me, that stuff's important. Flashlight. I always keep a very bright flashlight, 1,000 lumen flashlight. It's an extremely great deterrent for crime and violence. When people are blinded, we have this natural reaction to back up and back off. And that's a really great tool if you want a non-violent threat deterrence, and also obviously can just act as a flashlight for you. You can also I can break windows with mine very easily as well. Headlight, you saw my headlight. It's right there, accessible in the top of my bag. Very important. I always look for lights as well that have a white light and a red light. The red light is going to give you the ability to, with low visibility to others, to be able to see your surroundings, and it won't pick up as much on anybody else's eyes far away from you. Clothing, people are going to go crazy here with this stuff. And I seriously need to advise you against packing really like a lot of clothes. You actually don't need a lot of clothes. Okay. And I know this from my hunting days, but when I go hunting, and this is going to freak some people out. If you're in the city and you're used to like you change every single day, new shirt, new pants, new socks, new everything. I'm telling you right now, you don't need to do that. Okay. If you're in a survival situation, you're not hauling around your dresser. Okay. And I kind of make a tongue-in-cheek joke here in my actual write-up where I'm like, no, honey, the hair straightener is not that important right now. Or, no, dear, the 20-year-old bottle of scotch and all your watches and all this stuff's not that important right now. Watches, maybe if they're valuable because they could be used for bartering. But you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to bring the whole dresser. And so I would really focus on the minimum viable gear for the weather. Okay. What kind of weather are you likely to experience? And this is where the go bag needs to be seen as a dynamic tool. Okay. It's changing every season. In the winter, it doesn't make sense to have all your summer gear. And in the summer, it doesn't make sense to pack a toque. Okay. It just doesn't make any sense. So pack this thing according to the seasons. Socks, underwear. Those things are extremely important. If you get freaking crotch rot and you're out trying to survive, it's fucking deadly. And so is your feet. You don't want your feet getting damaged. And when your feet get really damaged, it makes it hard to survive. I've done 100-kilometer hike in one night before. So we start one day, hike for like 10 hours, then you kind of sleep an hour or two if you can, and then do another 10 hours, and that's your 100K. If your feet get fucked up, you are in bad trouble. And of course, mine did in the first 8 hours, which sucked. But seriously, having clean socks is going to help you with that. Rain and cold weather gear. We live in Canada, so this is super applicable to us. But if your go bag doesn't have the means to help you survive in the winter at night outside, you're in trouble. Okay. And again, we've already mentioned the idea of visibility. It's not ideal to be seen if you're trying to not be seen. So a big fire is probably not going to be ideal for you. What you want to do is get off the ground, have great cold weather gear. I always recommend a puffy. Okay, this is something that not a lot of people have, but if you are going to talk to any military special forces guys, they all pack a puffy. Puffies can be shrunk down into really small sizes. Mine happens to be from Arc'teryx, which is, albeit extremely expensive. It's probably $350, but it can be packed down into basically a ball that'll fit in your hand, and it will give you warmth way, 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 way further than a big, heavy cotton sweater. There's a common saying in survival that cotton kills. Okay, you want to avoid cotton. Cotton's a real bitch because when it gets wet, it takes your heat. Okay, and it becomes very heavy and it's very slow to dry. So cotton kills. Okay, so I actually forgot to write that in my write-up, which is unfortunate, but cotton kills. And so what's the better alternative? Wool, smart wool, merino wool. Okay, this shit's expensive, but you can often find it heavily discounted at stores like Mountain Equipment Co-op. You just might be getting a color pattern that people don't like, which is fine. We're surviving. We don't need to look that cool. Hat for the sun. A lot of people don't think about that. The sun will also kill you. Okay. If you get seriously sunburned or sunstroke, you're not going to be surviving that long. Water purification chemicals. Iodine's great. There are multiple AB solutions that just come in packs. All your outdoor stores, all your camping supply places will have this type of thing. But what it allows you to do when accompanied with a water vessel is that you can collect water. And remember, guys, if you're in a survival situation, people are looking for water and food, like we've already talked about. Okay, so when you're at a place that is plentiful in water, what you want to have is a vessel that can carry the water and then get the fuck out of there. Okay, get your water, go somewhere else to purify it. You don't want to be hanging out where the water and the food is. That's what's going to draw in other people. So a nice vessel. I prefer a Camelback bladder. That's what I use. And then you put your water chemicals right into it. It'll purify it all. Then you've got 3 liters of water that you can carry away with you. And it'll fit perfectly, should fit perfectly in your bag. Hygiene kit, dental health, right? So a toothpaste, travel toothbrush, or a cut-off toothbrush. Tampons, okay, for my ladies out there, and baby wipes. Baby wipes are the secret weapon on this list that you might not see on anybody else's list that you absolutely need. It's required. No explanation needed. Trust me, baby wipes are the play. Toilet paper helps too. Signaling. A lot of people won't think about this one, but if you're in a situation where you want to be found, things like flares or a mirror can be very helpful. Often with search and rescue or any type of emergency situations, there's going to be helicopters or planes or things above head. You can use signaling mirrors. This is actually tip and trick from Vietnam that people are still using right now, 2020, 2021, when they're in desert warfare. Okay. If you want to reach somebody in an airplane, the best way to do it is none other than a mirror. Okay. A signaling mirror. This will get the pilot will see the reflection. They can easily see it from thousands of feet in the air, as well as flares. And then finally, one of the most important things ever, and I'm going to share it right here on the screen, cash. Cash is king, baby. Don't ever leave the house without cash. We saw that when the internet went out, like Matt has already mentioned on the show. Okay. When the internet was gone, there was no ATMs, there was no debit cards, there's no MasterCard, there's no Amex, there's no Visa. What are you using? Well, you probably don't want to carry bricks of gold around with you. And actually, in fact, it's going to be hard to access your Bitcoin. So cash, people will value cash, right? Cash and other valuables that are compact. Like if I could trade somebody, say I got a $50,000 Rolex here, if I can give them that and they're willing to give me a car, something, that they don't see useful right now, sure, great trade. Okay, $5,000 car when you need it is better than a $50,000 watch telling you the goddamn time. So that's a lot of the stuff that I have in my go bag.
A couple quick things, Adam. I just wanted to build upon there.
Yep.
I'm just looking to find it right now. But in regards to Bitcoin, you could also have one of these, right? An open dime. And again, if it's unpunctured, as this one is, you can tell that no one's used it. So again, like there are ways that you could check the balance on this, even if telecommunications were to go down. So that's just kind of food for thought there. I don't think that people would be like, if you were trying to prepare for, if you believe like a serious collapse, things outside of cash, I think can still be a great store of value, like gold. Gold, like while you probably can't carry your entire net worth in gold, if you're a rich person, having a small amount of it is useful. But again, even for individuals that are maybe less economically inclined or don't have the same sort of capital, like even things like junk silver, right? Like a
Yep.
lot of prepper books and stuff, if you get into that, junk silver is a very popular reoccurring theme. And so that's literally just any coinage from Canada or the United States pre 1964 will have a certain quantity of silver in them, right? So I think like pre 1964, it's like 90% is silver there. So again, after that, they replaced it all with is it nickel and steel or whatever? But yeah, so just kind of food for thought there too, guys. But cash is like, again, even just with what we experienced with the Interact going down, that was so powerful.
Yeah, extremely powerful and eye-opening. My argument against the junk silver and stuff is that your average person has no goddamn clue what they're looking at, but your average person does probably have resources you would want or need, and so that's why I think cash is still the most important, is because they'll understand the value of $100 bill, even if at the time, in a real chaos, your paper money is not gonna, like, it literally is worthless. Except for the idea that we could still barter it. Now, we are going over time here, so I appreciate all of you and your time, but I do think it's important still to cover the truck. And so truck, vehicle, the get home bag.
You
And
oh,
and this is something I really think is important. Okay, because most of the time when shit happens, you're probably not at the house. Okay, I'm thinking snow and ice storms. I'm thinking lightning and windstorms and down power lines. I'm thinking power outages causing loss of visibility and traffic light functionality. I'm thinking you're out and about, daily routine, going to work, coming back from the daycare, grabbing groceries. You've got an inoperable vehicle with engine issues, out of fuel, flat tire, loss of power steering, stuck in the snow or in a ditch. You've got things like terrorism, right? We've seen bombs, we've seen 9/11, we've seen a lot of things stopping traffic, true gridlock traffic where you can't go anywhere, getting lost or you don't have cell service, or like the other day when it just disappeared on everybody. And there's also a medical or family emergency. These are all things that can happen to you in your vehicle. And your vehicle, if we just change our framing of mind, can actually be your mobile command center. And I make a few arguments here that from a survival perspective, your vehicle is going to help you with a lot of things. It is locking doors that can slow down or deter robbery. Okay, it's got concealment in the trunk where people can't see through it at all. Or if you have tinted windows, you can often conceal your body or any valuables in there, especially with the use of a blanket or anything like that. You have cover from shrapnel and projectiles. And cover is not to say that your car is not bulletproof. Okay, it's probably aluminum if you're in North America, or steel. And if it's aluminum, like if somebody shoots at your car, chances are the bullet's going to go through, but it's going to get deflected, as well as slowed down. And so it is actually decent cover. If it's not good cover, it's definitely good concealment. Remember, you don't want to be seen. You don't want to become a target. It's a heat source. Okay, if it's running, it can run heat. If it's not running, you can extract the fuel from it, right? A lot of cars actually now have anti-siphoning technology on them, so people can't siphon your fuel, but you can always get under the car, get to the fuel tank, puncture it. Won't cause it to explode, and drain the fuel out of it if you needed the fuel. It's a great power source when it's running. There's obviously a huge battery in there, and when it's running, you can plug all cars now have USB chargers and shit like that in them. It can hold hundreds of pounds of gear and supplies if necessary. Now, one of the things about that is, like, you don't want to be carrying more than what you can carry, because then it's kind of useless. But it is not a bad idea to have extras in your truck. Off-road capability in some cases. If you got a monster truck like mine, I don't need roads. Okay, I can go around the roads, or I can go over curbs and stuff like that. And so that makes it a decent thing to keep your mobility up. Escape and evasion means, right? If there's something going on and you're right in the thick of it, you can get the hell out of Dodge much faster in a vehicle, provided that it's not in a gridlock situation, etc., than you could on foot. And plus all the other benefits there. Offers radio for updates and messages if it's still operating. Bonus if you have CB radio or ham in there. It's grounded from electrical dangers like down power lines. And it's also a decent shelter from environment, right? Things like snow, ice, rain. even fire for a very limited amount of time. You could drive through some fire without having the immediate flame and heat that you would if you were not covered in that in it as shelter. So mobility equals survivability, but you still want to have these things prepared. So if all this shit's just laying around in your vehicle, it's far less accessible and far less useful to you than if it is organized and in a bag and you know where everything is, so that you can actually leave that vehicle and bring survivability with you. And so I think it's not enough to just have all this stuff laying around in your vehicle. I think it should also be in a bag and organized for actual portability. So emergency medical kit. Okay. And here you want to have stop the bleed. A popular thing you might want to consider these days is norepinephrine. Okay. So if people are running into some, what's that shit? Fentanyl. You can sort of bring them back to life with some norepinephrine and naloxone. EpiPen. So EpiPen's great. Again, allergic reactions, all sorts of things can be stopped dead in its tracks with EpiPens. Any type of prescriptions that are regular to you and your family, because if you have to get out of Dodge, you can't make it back to the house. Okay, the go bag for the vehicle, by the way, is either the get home or get the hell out of Dodge bag, right? So if you can't go back to the house, you want to have a lot of these things that would be redundantly already in your go bag, just in case you can't get there. So prescriptions, that's great. Lighters, multiple. Scissors, again, for cutting away any clothing or anything that we need to get out of the way if we need to provide first aid. Tourniquet. I have a tourniquet in my bag and in my truck always. So in my truck, when I open my door, it's attached to my actual seatbelt. So my back rear driver door, it's attached to the seatbelt. You can instantly pull it out. If somebody's really injured in a car accident or a shooting or something like that, you can save their life instantly. It takes minutes to bleed out from a gunshot wound to an artery, but you can save their life with a tourniquet. Water purification tablets with a bottle or vessel, local and provincial / state maps, dehydrated meals with jet boil, personal protection. You take that however you want, and whatever your state or province allows you to do for that. Flashlight, rain gear, cold weather gear, gloves. Okay, gloves are great. If you need to break windows or do anything, you don't want to get cut, gloves can really help with that. Paracord, power bank. Okay, keep that phone charged if it's still useful. And if it's not, I do have rechargeable batteries in my 1,000 lumen flashlight as well that can be plugged into the power bank. Hatchet, fuel. Fuel is going to stay in the truck. You're not going to run away with the fuel, but things that you want in your vehicle just in case you need it. Tools specific to your vehicle, right? You've all had a flat tire, but do you know how to change that thing? Do you even have a tire iron? Does your jack work? Sometimes they're seized up. You haven't used it for years. Do you even know how to get to it in your car? Where is that thing? Recovery rope or chain. If you get stuck, decent thing to have to be able to get yourself out if there's somebody else there to help you, or you can have a mechanical winch. That's a great idea. Jumper cables or a jump start. They make really compact jump start things now that can start your vehicle for you. Tarp, flares, and of course, cash. So I recognize we went long here, and I could talk literally all day about this stuff because I'm really excited. And this is the hobby day, so it's like only things we're going to be super excited about. I'll try and be less superfluous on my next presentation, but I do believe that this stuff's important, and there may be things on here, and I hope there are things on here that you weren't thinking about that maybe now you're thinking about it and you're like, hey, you know what? I can spend a few bucks and go grab that, right? Tarp from the dollar store. It's like all this stuff is available to you. Some of it's more expensive than others, but like Matt said, and I think this is a really great point, something is going to be better than nothing, right? If you can't afford the lightest, warmest, most compact jacket, tent, whatever, that's okay. You can use what you have at home. But I think what the point is don't be trying to pack this when the emergency's happening. Don't be trying to decide what you need when your nervous system is trying to get you to run away and trying to block your decisions and just focus on your physical safety. Like it's going to be much harder to think. Okay. And you guys know this, if you've been in a car accident, if you've been in a real natural disaster, if you've ever been lost in the woods, your decision-making gets thrown out the window. You become a freaking chimp. So pack this stuff beforehand, be prepared, and make sure you have a plan, right? Having a plan's the number one thing, and communicate that plan to the other people in your life that are part of that plan. Okay. If you have a plan, but your family doesn't know it, it's not a good plan. Okay. If you have an escape route or a bag and nobody knows how to use what's in that bag, including your other family members, it's not a good bag. It's not a good plan. So just a few things to consider. And again, I apologize for going a little long on today's video, but Matt, any additional thoughts or closing thoughts you wanted to make on this?
Yeah, I always find this stuff fascinating. So again, really happy that we could put this together. For anyone that's interested in our Telegram chat, I actually just shared one of my favorite real life stories about someone surviving in a conflict zone. This one in particular relates to an individual that survived in a city during the 90s in Bosnia. So literally like no running water, no power, no food. And they talk about like how the barter economy became such a big thing. What really made me think about it was actually when you mentioned lighters, because that
Yep.
turned out to be one of the very like popular things to trade, right? It's like ammunition, lighters, and alcohol is kind of what he explores and discusses. And again, not that you need to be prepared for any and all inevitabilities, but honestly, literally, even just listening to this or thinking about this for 5, 10, 20 minutes will put you in a better position than probably the average citizen. And it really is about trying to get that competitive edge in like a high stress situation. So yeah, love this stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, much appreciated. And yeah, the lighter thing's interesting. And there's a social phenomenon right now that much less people smoke. Okay. That
Yeah.
straight up
Well,
affects how this works. Less people have lighters.
I shared it on social media like a year ago, but like I bought a couple cases of lighters, right? So I've got like
Yep.
100 lighters in my pantry. Again, it's one of those things that like it's not going to go bad before I use it. I can slowly cycle through it. And if you found yourself in a shit hits the fan into the world as we know it situation, well, hey, you can use it for barter, you can use it personally, whatever the case may be. So again, it's
Oh,
the same idea as having like, a week or a month's worth of dry stored food in your pantry.
I have something, and this can be a close off because I know we're really going over here. But uh, final thing, just regarding lighters, because this is one of those random things that, like, if you're not thinking about it, you're just not going to be thinking about it. If you only have one lighter, and it's like straight up the only lighter that you have, it's basically your only means of creating fire in a survival situation. That's bad, obviously. But one of the things that people have encountered in hiking and outdoorsmanship and whatever is they have one lighter and it's in their pocket, right? Or it's in their bag. And the fuel gets depressed on it, right? You depress that little red button. If we're talking about a standard BIC here, you press the button, right? Fuel starts coming out. Well, if that butane exits the lighter, not very much use to you. And so, do you know how to combat this, Matt?
Uh, like I other than just like store it in a more proper fashion, no.
Okay, well, store it in a more proper fashion is probably not going to be applicable when you're panicking and trying to survive. So here's one thing you can do to take this into your control: an elastic band. Nobody knows this trick. It's freaking genius. Special operations guys are using this trick all around the world. You take an elastic band, you wrap it around the top of the lighter, and put it under the red. You know, the red button. I should have a lighter around here, but I don't. The red button that you use to light the thing. Put the elastic band under that. The button can't get depressed. You will have fuel in your lighter. Plus, you can use the elastic later for whatever the hell you need.
Gotcha.
Or you
So
could
you're
use,
wrapping it around the width, not the lengthwise. Yeah.
yep. Yeah,
Because the
exactly.
lengthwise would do the exact opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to have some sort of brain here. But yeah, if you wrap an elastic band underneath that red button or the button that controls the fuel, you will absolutely be able to prevent that situation from happening. And again, what's an elastic going to cost you? I don't know. Buy some broccoli, comes with it, and you'll have a free elastic for your lighter so that you don't run out of butane before you need to use it. But again, we're getting crazy here. It's probably time for us to sign off. And tomorrow, Matt, what are we going to be talking about? Give us a little tease.
So yeah, tomorrow's Friday, so that's kind of our community day. So we'll do the first or the last 24 hours in the first half of the show, and then we'll be joined by our buddy Dan, the NFT boy, and we're going to be talking about our favorite concert experiences.
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to that. And until tomorrow, you guys, I hope you are. I hope you're seeing that you can use some of this content. You can join our Substack. You can join the Telegram group. You can follow us on Rumble or YouTube, and just try and consume this content in order to get 1% better. That's what we're trying to do here. We're joining you on the journey, by the way. Everything that we're researching, all these talks, are in order to help us also get 1% better. And I think that's going to help us all to have the best day ever. And the best day ever, I do believe, includes, your friends, your family, your network, and those people around you. And I hope that today's talk kind of showed you a bit about that. So anyways, we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
Thanks, guys.
They say life is what you make it. So what happens if you actually try? What if you actually tried to get your mind right? What if you actually tried to live the high life? What if you happen to die cause life is finite? What if you actually tried to live your best day ever? What if you actually tried to get your mind right? What if you actually tried to live the high life? What if you happen to die cause life is finite? What if you actually tried to live your best day ever? What if you actually grind out when the time's right? What if you actually blinded by your hindsight? What if you actually find out what defines life? What if you actually tried to live your best day ever? I'm getting 1% better every day. I'm getting 1% better every way. I'm waking up every day to a sunny day. No matter what the weather say, life is like a record, so just let it play.